All right, let's begin right away. It looks like civil servants will have to make do with 18,000 naira minimum wage for their Christmas celebration and all the shoppings they're supposed to do, and for all the demands that come at Christmas.
And you begin to wonder how effective and how enough that amount of money will be for them at this time. Well, the chances of the proposed minimum wage of 30,000 naira kicking off this year are getting slimmer as December the 31st approaches. Given the current economic situation, it will be a grim shopping experience for Nigerian civil servants.
Now, while the federal government and the labor union face off, how will the average worker manage? That is what we'll be talking about next. We have with us the Deputy Convener of the Joint Action Front, Achike Chude, in the studio. Achike, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you.
I know you've been following even right from last year when this tripartite committee was set up to look into the new minimum wage, the developments, the delay, the accusation, counter-accusation, and then what came up, the threats, and so on, up until now. When the final results came out, or when the final, the white paper came out, Nigerians were expecting that there should have been a time frame pegged to that recommendation to say, okay, this should be done or concluded before so day so that Nigerians can hold on to it. But it seems government is taking advantage of that hollow.
Yeah, I do not think, I think it's deliberate.
Okay.
This attempt to delay the inevitable, because ultimately, it's going to happen. It's just that in the process, while they play their politics, lives of people are at stake. 18,000 has been ridiculous, even from the very first day it was signed, and a lot of Nigerians agreed that it's not the kind of salary that would take an individual home, monthly. But again, it was a sacrifice that Labour had to make at a particular point in time when the government appeals to them to see the other side. Of course, the other side always has to do with, because the other side is a one-sided thing. The elites continue to live in splendor, and their obscene wealth, and they show it, they display it every day, while the average citizen continues to wallow in poverty and misery. So the workers have been able to have a consensus on what is needed. And you can see that the three labor centers involved in this particular struggle, the NLC, the TUC, and the ULC, have worked together, have collaborated together, have shown that kind of solidarity that is needed for moments such as this. But unfortunately, the government continues to talk in disparate tones. Of course, the rancor in their midst, I think, is what is responsible for this. But again, the politician, can be a very interesting person, especially in Nigeria. So I think they are also aware of what they are doing. What they are trying to do is just to buy themselves time for the purpose of having this election. And then after the election, they will think, they think that perhaps they would have all the aces. And then just do whatever it is they want to do. But again, the resolve of the Nigerian workers has shown, or should be a signal to them, that they have had enough and that they are willing to go all out to ensure that justice is done.
I'm wondering really how much time government can buy itself right now. Already the National Assembly has promised an accelerated hearing and pass it into law as soon as they get this bill from the executive. Recently, the CBN governor also said that the proposed increase in the national minimum wage is going to boost the economy through increased aggregate demand. So expectations are high as regards the body language of the federal government at this time. But are you optimistic that this bill is going to, be forwarded to the National Assembly before the end of this year?
No, I'm not exactly optimistic. I mean, the election, one of those things that's exceedingly of great importance to this country is the Electoral Act, sign it into law. The president has turned it down about 3 times. What reasons they are giving, I don't know. But I mean, if it's as important as we know it is, all you need to do is just to, look at all the gray areas. sit down with the members of National Assembly and then get this thing sorted out and sign it into law. So if the government does not consider, the federal government does not consider the Electoral Act important enough at this particular stage, then it gives you an idea of the disposition, the character, and the temperament of the government when it comes to issues that really matter. Because there's no basis. So I'm not holding my breath when it comes to the issue of, putting a time frame, at least before December. But all I know is that if it gets to the National Assembly, I have a feeling, that in spite of the inconsistencies of the National Assembly, that they will give it expedited hearing like they have said and get it passed. So the issue is not with the members of National Assembly. The issue is a federal government state issue, and again, it's just unfortunate because ultimately they have given reasons why they might not. Of course, I would agree with the CBN governor because you see, whenever you have so much money within the economy, it depends on what you want to do. Do you want to deflate the economy? Do you want to inflate the economy? And so when you have a lot of money or a reasonable amount of money within the economy, what it does is that it drives off, purchases of goods and services. It stimulates the economy. That is what happens. So the CBN governor is very, very right. It has a way of having a positive impact on the economy. But then, it's getting to that level where that bill can actually be signed by the presidency. I don't know how much effort the president and the presidency is putting into making sure that state governors comply. There are many governors already that are on board, and whatever they are saying about inability to pay. So we've gone beyond that. We've long gone beyond that. There's an agreement in place, and they should be able to honor their words. And that has always been the problem that we have with our political leaders, because there's so much, the things that Nigerians demand so little from their political leadership, and that is why we continue to see this inconsistency between what they say and what they do.
The minimum wage is an item on the exclusive legislative list, which originally, if you have to, it is only the federal government that has the powers to even decide that on behalf of Nigeria. But it seems the state governors, it is totally on their table now to decide how it is going to be. Now, it is not a bad idea to carry all stakeholders along, but it seems the states now are the determinant factor of whether the new minimum wage is going to go ahead or not. We saw the arguments between the state government and the federal government, where the state governors are holding the government accountable, holding the government, saying that, okay, if you want us to pass this, it is two things. It is either you are going to devolve some level of the sharing formula, you're going to change sharing formula, or review the sharing formula, or we're going to,
downsize.
Downsize, exactly. Downsize the workforce.
And I think we have a way of putting the cart before the horse in this country. The reality is that our politicians, especially elected public office holders, are extremely very lazy and highly unimaginative. They bring nothing new to the table. And that's why Nigeria continues to be a rentier state. That is why we continue every month to wait for federal allocation so that they can get things to be done in the state. I would have expected some level of devolution of power when it comes to, some of the items, for instance, on the exclusive list, where the federal government, for instance, has overriding interest and overriding powers or control or command over mineral resources in virtually every part of this country. This is, a cash cow. This is one area where they could sit down with the state governments and say, look, you have these potentials in your states. You have all of these things. You are capable of generating 1 trillion naira even in your state if you're able to explore and exploit these opportunities that you have. Let us look at ways of changing the laws using the National Assembly. We have members from every state in the country. So there is a stake by everybody in the workability of that particular issue. And so when it happens, the state collects maybe, is it 60–70% of maybe 1 trillion naira, for instance, and then the federal government collects 30. Ultimately, it's a win-win situation because what's going to happen in virtually every part of this country? Are you talking about bitumen in Ondo State? Are you talking about gold and diamond? Are you talking about all of those things that make space travel, and space development for the industrialized, Western world possible? We have everything in Nigeria. So you can imagine a situation where every state is allowed to develop all of these things. And then they are now paying maybe 30% each from each of the states to the federal government. You'll be talking about a federal government that will be looking at a budget, estimate of around maybe 35 to 40 trillion every year, while the state is talking about generating maybe about ₦1 trillion or much more from all of these things. And that's why people, I think it was the former president of the United States, Bill Clinton, when he came to Nigeria and was talking before the national, members of National Assembly, he said it is not what is on the ground that is, the key to the country's development, but it is what is here. It's your ability, to translate what is here, use it to tap into the resources that has been given abundantly to Nigeria, to this country, and turn the country around. That is what is critical. And we have not been able to do these things. So every year, the governors wait for every month for send the accountants to Abuja so that they will decide how much they are going to generate and the rest. And in the process, the worker suffers the consequences of that. And even beyond that is the issue, and we keep on saying, now this discussion affords us the opportunity to put, to death once and for all this issue of security votes that do not serve any purpose except to line the pockets of the governors and the politicians. So in some states, they are collecting about 500 million naira a month. Some of these monies are enough to pay worker salaries. And I remember the argument when this government came in around 2015. Of course, minimum, the debts to workers had started piling up. But it was, I think, Rocha Sokorocha that incurred the wrath of his colleagues when he said he was going to use the security vote of his state to pay workers. It was enough. And a lot of his colleagues were not exactly happy about that. Of course, at that moment, he was playing to the gallery, but it did work. So what it tells you is that we have so much money. And again, it gives you an idea of the nature and character of the Nigerian state, where, stealing is legalized and legitimized by even the laws, the provisions of the laws of this country, because the issue of security vote that has to be given to a governor every single month, and he doesn't have to account for it. Monies that belong to the people, in that, that large amount of money that belongs to the people, and the governor is free to spend it any way he wants, and he doesn't have to account to anybody.
I wonder, no one has really gone to court and tested that issue in court. We wait to see how that is going to play out, really.
Yeah, it will be interesting. It will be interesting. But, sometimes when some of these things are provided for by law, sometimes the judges themselves are hamstrung. Looking at it from the moral perspective, it is repugnant. But when you have to look at it from the legal imperative and so on, you realize that maybe you might have to tinker with the law in order to, and for instance, the governors, people who had left office as governors, earning huge salaries and all of that, coming into the Senate, about 21 of them, and they are taking fat salaries as governors.
As governors.
And taking fat salaries as senators. So these are,
we also have former military officers who, who are senators and who are,
but you realize that the law in this country, if you look at it from that perspective, is only meant for the for the big, the powerful, and the influential. It is not for the ordinary people. And that's why the workers today have to face the consequences. I'm afraid we might have to
leave it there. Deputy Convener of the Joint Action Front, Achuke Chude, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
I'm wondering what the chances, what the options are for the average